Hello and welcome to the DecisionWise Engaging People podcast. My name's Charles Rogel. I'll be hosting / moderating our discussion today. With me is Dan Deka.
Hello, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Dan is one of our senior consultants here at DecisionWise. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create a positive environment, positive work environment more specifically. So this is one of those topics we also measure on employee engagement surveys and 360-degree feedback surveys to understand if a manager is creating a positive work experience environment for their team. And I think Dan Deka here is the perfect person to address this topic. He has a wealth of knowledge that we've shared or talked about before. And so, Dan, I want you to kind of give us maybe your initial thoughts on this and maybe the mindset that goes into creating a positive environment.
Thank you for that nice intro and setting me up there. Charles, when I think about a positive environment, my mind goes to no matter what religion you are or if you have no religion, you probably think about what's going to happen after you die.
Yeah.
And some people are like, I'm going to meet somebody at some pearly gates. Some people might be thinking, I don't know where exactly I'm going to be. But I think one of the most common experiences we're going to have at that point in our eternal existence is a realization of how powerful we were and are. And I think we're going to be looking back on our lives and our experiences and going, I think the most common question is going to be, you mean I had that much power and influence over my life and the people around me? And I think whoever is around you at that point is going to say yes. And I was trying to tell you that whole time. And so how this relates is I believe we have such an ability to create a positive environment. We have so much more than we think we do. I've heard it said recently that our happiness and joy and the peace that we feel in our lives is much more a function of our focus than our circumstances.
Okay.
And I just believe that so strongly. And so that's meaning that depending on what we focus on, we can have a huge impact on our environment.
So it's the Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life type of experience, right? If
I
you
would
weren't
say yes.
here,
Yeah.
what would have occurred in the world?
Yeah, and we can fill that place with a lot of positive experiences and influence others. And we are much more powerful than I think we sometimes give ourselves credit for.
Okay, so how do we translate that into kind of the workspace and creating a good, positive environment for our team?
When I think about that and I go, where does it start from? And if you almost move back from, we want to create a positive experience with our customers because that's good for our business. And then how are we going to do that? We're going to create a positive experience with our team so they can have good interactions with our customers.
Right.
And if you move back, I think it all starts in our head, between our ears, on what are we thinking and where is our focus. And so I think it's really interesting to think about not just the positive environment that we're trying to create, but the positive environment within our own heads. What is the story? What's the monologue? What's the narrative that's going on? I spend a lot of time coaching people, and sometimes I have to remind them, whatever's going on in your head, people are going to be able to pick up on and feel that.
Yeah.
And then they sometimes say, well, I'd never say that to someone. And I go, well, you don't have to say that because it's oozing out of you.
Yeah, 80% of language is body language.
Yeah, and it just comes out. And so I think the place to start with a positive environment is what's the nature and what's the tenor of your language in your head, that dialogue that you're having. Is it more on the positive side? It's more on the negative side, and to start there.
So kind of an emotional intelligence exercise, understanding and managing your own feelings and emotions and understanding how they impact others or how they kind of maybe bleed out of you in some way.
Yeah, and there's some examples of that, of like the influence of noticing where your thinking is leading you is, Charles, if you wanted to buy a new pickup truck, because I know you like trucks.
Yeah.
And you said, I wanted to buy a brand new one. I want it to be a yellow truck, and I want it to be raised up with some big tires. I pretty much guarantee you that as you planted that seed in your mind, when you're driving around over the next week or day, you're going to start seeing yellow trucks. And you're going to see more yellow trucks than you've seen in the last week or in the last month because your mind is focused on it.
Yeah.
And so I think that idea, that's an example of it. Another example is, whether you're going and listening to a speaker at church or you're going and listening to see, maybe you're listening to someone speak at a conference or even going to a class. a lot of the experience that you are going to have is based on what your expectations are. If you walk into that meeting house or that room and you're thinking, this is going to be boring, I can pretty much guarantee you what it's going to be.
Right.
But if you walk in there and you go, I'm excited to hear about this person. I have a question that I believe this person can answer for me. Your experience is going to be significantly different. So that's why those are just some examples of the power of our thinking and the power of our own internal processes on creating our own experience.
And so I can see that probably, just kind of being in tune with your thoughts and thinking and kind of where your head is every day is a difficult, can be easily overcome by the problems of the day, the commute you had driving into work, whatever. So how do you kind of maintain or recenter in a way to kind of put your best foot forward?
I was talking with a client last week, and they taught me a great lesson. He actually said, I'm so thankful for my 1.5-hour commute that I have every morning and every night.
Oh, man.
And I just kind of sat there and listened to him. And he said, because it gives me opportunities on my way to work to get my thoughts together and to prepare for work. And then on my way home, it gives me this buffer in between my work and my home. And it allows me to prepare myself for walking into my house and being there with my wife or my kids. And I thought that was amazing. And that's a great example of, we don't need to go to some foreign place to have a different experience. We can use what we have and use what we have to prepare ourselves and to be a little bit more aware of our thinking. So you can use your commute. You can use working out. You can use the time that you wake up before you get out of bed to pay attention and to think about, where's my mind? What am I thinking? And to influence that. So that was a great lesson from a client.
So it's interesting, there's a lot of talks, recent books on, happiness in general, just how to be happy in your life. And the idea of, a lot of people have this outlook that it's something that you kind of achieve or maybe arrive at when you have the new yellow truck, for example. What's your take on how to maybe experience that more often or more consistently?
I spent a lot of time, and I was actually talking with a client today about their definition of success.
Yeah.
And boy, if you listen to society and just followed whatever they said, then you're going to be happy if you buy this, wear this, and go here. The whole world is telling you, more. But if we can take some time and go, okay, that's the definition that the world puts out there. And there's some benefit for that. That's people have jobs, you're fulfilling needs, you're making products. So I'm not cutting on that, but you can't take your definition of success from the world. You've got to spend time and go, what's my definition of success? And a lot of times I think people avoid that conversation because I think the way that goes is, well, Dan, you're saying if I'm clear on my definition of success, what happens if I set my goals and I achieve it? And what I find is people aren't worried. They're less worried about not achieving their goals. They're more worried about, what if this actually works? I set these goals and I achieve them. What does that mean? And what responsibility do I have in my life to control where I'm going? And so it's kind of a weird thing. And I think a bunch of other people, I think sometimes it's attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it's we're not afraid that we are small and powerless. We're actually fearful that we are powerful and big and eternal. And so I think, but to kind of wrap that thought around, I think happiness is a function of what our expectations are. And if we're clear on what our expectations are, we've got a much more likelihood of fulfilling those expectations, feeling that sense of satisfaction. And then also it helps clarify the distance between these ideals that we have and these goals and then the reality of our lives. And when those don't match up, we get confused, there's complexity, there's disruption. But if we're clear on this is what I'm after and then this is what's happening, I can still stay on that path. And so I think just clarity on what success is for our lives and writing that script versus taking the script from the world goes a long way to creating something meaningful for us.
I like that. Yeah, I always tell my wife, just lower your expectations. You'll be much happier with me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I've thought that for, yes. And
Um, so then as your so let's say you feel more centered. You say, "Yeah, I'm in a good place right now. I feel pretty good today. Today's going to be a great day." How does that then translate into creating a positive environment for your team and the interactions that you have with other people?
Yeah, I think the clearer that you are about the kind of environment that you want to create for yourself, that's going to be magnified through the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're focused on that purpose and you're focused on creating that for yourself, I think you're going to be much more experienced and much more capable of creating that for other people. And so a lot of times it's like when you want to create this environment for others, I'm like, do you know how to create it for yourself? We have to know how to do that for ourselves first. And so as we build that capability to do it for ourselves, we're more experienced and more capable to do that for others. Meaning, if I can write my own goals and then navigate that path of when the reality and the ideal don't mix up, how do I make that work? I'm going to be much better at facilitating that process for the people around me on what are our goals as a team? And then what happens when we get off track with that? How do we navigate that and get back on track? And just a thought with that, Charles, because I know you love, like wrestling and MMA and like physical activities. Right. I once had the opportunity to hear the guy that brought Taekwondo to the U.S. speak.
Oh, really?
And it was fascinating. So he was up there and he was standing in front of the group and he said, I can do 50 push-ups in 30 seconds. So he gets down and he does it. And I'm just like, well, that's amazing because he's in his 80s. And then he stands there and he goes, I can stand on one leg and touch my knee from my other leg to my forehead while I'm standing here. And he does that. And so everyone's looking at him and someone asks what everyone's thinking. They ask him, how are you always in such perfect balance? And then he kind of chuckles in a wise, sage way. And he says, I'm not always in perfect balance. I just recover so quickly you think I am. And I think this has to go a long way around like what creates a positive work environment. Is it meeting that perfection, that goal that we have, or is it recovering quicker? And so I think those ideas of like getting clear on what success is, practicing that for yourself makes you better at doing that for others. Yeah. And so we set these goals and it's kind of a paradox. You have these high goals that you want to achieve, but then you often don't achieve them.
Sure.
And we live in a paradox and in a duality, and it's okay. You can have both of those things. As we practice it for ourselves, we can provide more help for others. That you go, yes, we have these goals. This is what we want to attain. We don't achieve them. That's not failure. That's an opportunity to learn. I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to recover and move forward. I think that capacity is probably the most helpful thing that we can do for ourselves and as a leader of others.
And so making it kind of safe in the workplace for people to, be empowered, exercise their ideas, be more responsible for the outcomes of their work, that sort of thing. So within the team, though, I guess, as people would say, if I was taking a survey and saying my manager creates a positive and energizing workplace, are you saying it's more tied to maybe the personal interactions I've had with that manager and how they're helping me shape my path forward or my place in the workplace? Or because that question I look at, I think people interpret as, well, that guy's just always energetic and positive and kind of a cheerleader, about things. But I think a lot of people's personalities don't lend themselves that way. They don't appear that way to people, but yet they can still create a positive environment.
I two thoughts on that. One is I guarantee you that anyone that can create and are described as creating a positive work environment for the people around them have done the personal work themselves. Yeah. So I guarantee and promise that. So that's why I'm emphasizing like this own personal work that we do. And then the second thought around creating a positive environment, a lot of times people think, and they have this kind of Hollywood image of what an energetic leader looks like. And it's loud, it's aggressive, and there are so many different versions of powerful and energetic. And I was just coaching someone this morning, and they had a background. They grew up on a farm, and they got a 360 and said they need to be more assertive. But we talked about what does assertive look like from a farmer. As a farmer's not going around and talking a whole bunch, but they're very assertive about their plans. Yeah. They're very assertive about their vision. I'm going to plant. I'm going to make a decision today. I'm going to pull all this in because the rain's coming. So we talked about being assertive in a way that fits them. And I also think this positive work environment, you can do that in a way that magnifies your strengths, and you don't need to do it like everyone else. You can display positivity and assertiveness and an eagerness and an excitement in your own way. And so I spent a lot of time coaching people about helping them identify their strengths and then helping them manifest those and leverage those. But you don't need to do it like everyone else does.
Yeah. Okay. And I think there's also a point here where people are thinking, well, gosh, we have high, there's high pressure stakes here. We have to get things done. I can't afford to be nice all the time. Sometimes I just got to tell people what to do and when to get it done, or else we're going to be in trouble. So, I can't always be nice. Or some people need, corrective action or performance plans or things like that. So, do I sacrifice my positivity to have to be negative sometimes?
Yeah, with that, I kind of have a roundabout answer to that. We actually can answer most questions by listening. I think if you pay attention and maybe for the next week just go around and go, when people ask me questions, how many things do I actually need to take action on? And how many times did they just want to be listened to and understood? And so I would just kind of keep that thought and play with that thought a little bit, because a lot of times people get worried that they need to do something all the time. I think the majority of times they need to listen and to understand, and that solves a lot of problems, and they actually don't need to take that action. So I just that was kind of my response to this fear that I've got to take this action and do these things all the time. And if I'm going to make this commitment to creating a positive work environment, I'm never going to get anything done, because I'm just going to be right. And I'm like, actually, if you show that you care about what people think, you're willing to listen to them and work with them, that goes a long way, and you'll actually find that you'll be doing a lot less of the work than you may have in the past, when you think, my purpose is to have all the answers and to drive all the things on this team. And when you start moving from that individual contributor mindset to more of a management mindset of, my goal is to help other people find the answer, and then you continue on that path of, as a leader, into a leadership mindset of, my goal is actually to build the capability and the confidence of everyone around me. And think about that, how that relates to a positive work environment. If they feel capable and confident, they're going to be able to serve our customer and answer questions, and it's going to be a much more positive place.
Excellent. Well, great. So, Dan, anything else you want to add to the conversation on building a positive and energizing workplace?
I think just emphasizing the point that it starts with us, it starts within our hearts and within our minds. And that personal work to do that, and I only say this because I've spent so many times, I had so much time with so many wonderful leaders because of our profession.
Yeah.
And I just see these people that are the most successful, they have spent the time and paid the price to do their own personal work. And as they clear and clarify what's in between their ears and their thoughts, they're able to have an influence on others. It's almost like a stone dropped into a pond and the ripples that come from there. It all starts somewhere with our thinking, and then it expands and influences and interacts with others. So I just encourage people to spend the time and have the confidence that the changes that you make inside will have a great impact on those around you.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you very much. And listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you join us on a future podcast.